right, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning. Reverend Dr. Ron Fox has been a motivational speaker and workshop facilitator for over 25 years. He's had a long and successful career as a human resources executive working for such companies as General Foods, GlaxoSmithKline, Unum, and Mattel Toys. Ron has also operated a successful search firm in Southern California. He's also an ordained minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living. He's a gifted speaker and a published author. His inspirational style, coupled with a keen sense of humor, makes him a favorite with audiences everywhere he's spoken. In 2018, the Centers for Spiritual Living honored him by designating him a Doctor of Divinity. And in 2019, he was awarded the Meritorious Minister Award for his outstanding service. He resides in Port St. John, Florida, with his wife, Becky, who's an artist designer as well as a CSL practitioner emeritus. Welcome, Reverend Ron.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really great seeing and speaking here. So my title today, I think it's a kind of a good, I wrote this actually before the election, but it's a good title. It's Embracing Change. And I want to look at change from several different aspects. You know, the reality is, instead of fearing change, what we need to do is try to figure out how we can use it. Because every loss, every difficulty is an opportunity to grow if we're open to it. You know, life doesn't stay the same, and security isn't secure. The risks that we don't take today are the regrets that we have tomorrow. And I say that because researchers, when they've worked with people on their deathbeds, most people don't regret what they did. They regret what they didn't do. So I want to read you a quote from a fellow named James Robinson. And he wrote, "Greatness in the last analysis is largely bravery, courage in escaping from old ideas and standards and respectable ways of doing things." In short, he's telling us to get out of our comfort zones. And we all know that life doesn't always work out the way we'd like it to. So about a year or a year and a half ago, Becky and I went to a local theater to see the play Into the Woods. So now at the end of the first act, Cinderella marries the prince, Red Riding Hood escapes from the wolf, and Jack slays the dragon and comes back down. In the second act, we're reminded people don't always live happily ever after. The prince cheats on Cinderella, and he tells her, "I was raised to be charming, not faithful." The giant's wife comes after Jack, and a few other people die and live unhappily. And the message is, sometimes life can hurt. And the question for us is, how do we handle it when our dreams don't come true? Do we define ourselves by our dreams or by our disappointments? And where do we find the courage to go on when life doesn't give us what we want? You know, Christopher Reeve, many of you will remember him. He played Superman, and then he was injured in a horse jumping accident, and he was paralyzed. And at some point, he wanted to commit suicide. And his wife said to him, "Chris, don't let this define you." You know, the truth is that you and I are more than anything that can ever happen to us. So I want to share with you something that I read a few years ago. This is a college professor on the first day of her class said to her students, I want to get to know you all better. So your assignment is, I want each of you to write 2 one-page essays and return them to me. And here are the topics she told the class to write on. Here's the first one. Everything I've ever done has led me to where I find myself today. And the second topic is, it is only after many surprises and choices, detours and disappointments that I have arrived at somewhere I could never have anticipated. And I have to tell you, every time I think of that last one, I think of my dad, because my dad and I were really close. And he died when I was 28, so that's been a few years. And I think if he could come back and we could meet, he'd look at me and he'd go, long hair, hey? Is that an earring? And tattoos? You got a couple of tattoos? And a minister of where? And he'd have a heart attack and be right back gone again. You know, where we get the courage to move on is from within, from knowing that spirit is one with us, that the power that created everything is always with us. So you and I are never alone. Ernest Holmes told us that we're all the result of how we use the law, and we can use it to create the life that we want. And we teach that we should always expect the best. And we do that through our consciousness. We do it through the vessel we provide spirit. And the larger the vessels, so to speak, the grander the life. So I want to move on and look at change from a different aspect. And I want to begin it by giving you a quote by a lady named Estelle Frankel. And she wrote, ultimately, the whole and the broken live side by side in us. And I want to give you an example of what she was speaking about. Rachel Remen, some of you may know her. She's a doctor. She's a wonderful author. And she lives in California. And she does counseling with people who are in difficult situations. And one day a lady comes to see her who, for the last 2 years, has basically given up on life. She doesn't cook. She doesn't clean. She doesn't do the gardening she loves to do. She pretty much sits day after day staring out the window. At one point, a doctor gave her some antidepressants. They didn't work, so she stopped taking them. And Rachel says to her, of course, the first time they get together, so tell me, why are you here? And she says to Rachel, my husband died. And Rachel says, so if he were here with us now, what would you say to him? And she says, I would tell him about my life. I would tell him what life is like, how it hurts to go to our special places without him, to go alone, how I have to learn to do all the things that he did, how it feels to walk the dog alone, how it feels to be in our bed all alone. She said, I'm really angry. He broke his promise. He told me we would grow old together. He was my teacher of love. And Rachel says to her, if he were here with us now, what do you think he'd say to you about the way you lived these last 2 years? And she thinks for a little bit, and she says, I think he'd say, Enid, why have you built a monument of pain to my life in memory of me? My life was all about love. And Enid looks at Rachel and says, perhaps there's a better way I can remember him. I read this on Facebook a few weeks ago. It's kind of a definition of grief, and I really resonate with it. Grief never ends, but it changes. It's a passage, not a place to stay. Grief is not a sign of weakness or a lack of faith. It's the price of love. Every loss demands that we choose again. We need to grieve because that's how we heal. You let go of the things that are gone and you mourn for them, and then you rebuild again. So one more time, I want to look at change and loss, and this is a different kind. So years ago, a minister friend was chatting with me, and she said, I thought, Ron, that we ministers, we speak on a lot of different topics, but each of us has a few topics that are in our heart and that really resonate with us. And we speak on those topics over and over again in different ways. And the more I thought about what she said, the more I thought, wow, she's really on to something. And I thought, so what are mine? And I thought, well, my topics that I really come back to are living your dreams, creating the life you want, continuing to grow, finding your purpose in life, and living it with passion. So a few years ago, Becky and I were out at a cafe having coffee with one of my congregants. And she was somebody we were close to. And she turns to me and she says, would you like some feedback? And as soon as she said it, I knew this is not going to be good feedback. And I said to her, of course. And she said to me, hey, Ron, I think you're a great speaker, really, really good speaker. But I don't think your messages are relevant for our congregation. She said, our people are too old for talks about living their dream and living with purpose and passion. We're done with that. And I have to tell you, that really threw me. It really honestly shook my confidence. I said to Becky, what I heard and what Beck, is what good is it if I say it really well, if they don't like what I'm saying, if they don't like the content of what I have to say. And I did check with some other congregants and I got past it. But I want to spend the rest of our time talking about aging. So researchers at Columbia University did a study on the relevance of between aging and learning something new. And they found out that One had nothing to do with the other, that people could learn new things at any age. The only time older people had a difficult time learning something new was when they used age as an excuse. And I want to give you two statistics actually. By the year 2030, which is only like 5 years away, 72 million people in the workforce will be 65 or older. That is 19% of the population. So the idea that life goes downhill after a certain age is no longer true, because we're all living longer. And so if you believe that life stops after a certain age, you might be living a lot of empty years. And so let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So years ago, I lived in Southern California, and one of my work friends was a guy named Scott. And let me tell you about Scott. Scott was about 10 years younger than I was. He was tall. He was good looking. He was single. He was athletic. He had a really good job, and he lived in a really nice home. So Scott had what we would consider everything going for him. And one day I was out with another friend, and he said to me, "Hey, did you hear about Scott?" And I said, "No, what?" And he said, "Scott is moving to Cleveland." I want to tell you, I, in my adult life, or I guess my whole life, have lived in 8 states. And I don't have anything against Ohio. I've been to Ohio. But I will say to you that of the 8 states, Becky and I like living in Florida, but for me, nothing compared to living in Southern California. So to hear that somebody was moving from Southern California to Cleveland was shocking. So when I got home, I called up Scott. And as soon as he heard my voice, he said, "Oh my God, I am so sorry. I have wanted to talk to you and been meaning to talk to you, but I'm so busy." And he said, "I guess you heard." And I said, "I did. What the heck is going on?" And he said, "Ron, a while back, I had an aha." He said, "My aha was, life is too long." And I said, "Scott, most people would say life is too short." And he said, "They're wrong. They're wrong. Let me tell you what I mean." And he said, "Ron, I'm young. I'm athletic. I'm going to live a long time. And I'm also going to live a long time after I retire." And I started to realize I love my life now. I love my single life. But if this is the way I keep on going, I might be setting myself up for a lot of loneliness and a lot of emptiness. About a year ago, I went to a conference and I met somebody. And I fell in love, Ron. I really love her. I don't have any relatives here. Her whole family lives in Cleveland. She won't move here. The choice I saw was continuing my life as it is, or moving somewhere for love. I'm choosing life and I'm choosing love. So I'm moving, Ron. You know, we never get too old to ask the question, who would I like to be? We can ask ourselves, where do you place your attention? On what you lost or what you can have? In the book, 6 Questions That Can Change Your Life, Joseph Nowicki asks, who am I? Why am I here? Where do I belong? Who do I love? Who loves me? How can I be true to myself? There is no age limit to asking those questions. So, what can we do? Let me suggest to you 5 things that we can do. One is we can step out of our comfort zone. And I'm not suggesting that anybody change their entire life and turn it upside down. What I am suggesting is you can try something new, do something a little different, do something maybe that you've always wanted to do, but you haven't had the opportunity to do yet. You know, like I said before, you don't want to be on your deathbed and regret what you didn't do. Something else, and also, if you don't step out of your comfort zone, you don't ever learn anything new. You don't have a chance to grow. Second thing we can do is we can get committed. We can develop a vision for our life and write it down. You know, Becky and I did that a couple of years ago. We created a vision for our life together. And once or twice a year, we look at it and we change it. In fact, we're about due, but we really are talking about perhaps making a major change in our life right now. A third thing we can do is we can change how we look at things. What if we saw aging not as the end, but as the beginning of something new with all its challenges and all its rewards? We can treat ourselves with compassion. You know, my body and me ain't the same as when I was 25. We can take those changes as they come, and we can accept them, live with them, and then see what's next and what's new. And lastly, we can hang out with like-minded people. I think that's so important, to be with people who think the way we do, who act the way we do, who believe what we believe. And I want to close with a piece that, when I looked this up, it had 3 different titles and 3 different authors. So I'll just go with the first one, a lady named Veronica Robinson, and the title is Barely the Day Started. Barely the day started, and already it's 6 p.m. Barely arrived on Monday, and it's already Friday. And the month is already over, and the year is almost over. And already 40, 50, 60 years of our lives have passed. And we realized that we lost our parents, friends, and we realized it's too late to go back. So let's try, despite everything, to enjoy the remaining time. Let's keep looking for activities we like. Let's put some color in our gray. Let's smile at the little things in life that put balm in our hearts. And despite everything, we must continue to enjoy with serenity this time we have left. Let's try to eliminate the afters. I'm doing it after. I'll say after. I'll think about it after. We leave everything for later, like laughter is ours, because what we don't understand is afterwards, the coffee gets cold. Afterwards, priorities change. Afterwards, the charm is broken. Afterwards, health passes. Afterwards, the kids grow up. Afterwards, parents get old. Afterwards, promises are forgotten. Afterwards, the day becomes night. Afterwards, life ends, and then it's often too late. So let's leave nothing for later, because still waiting for see you later we can lose the best moments, the best experiences, the best friends, the best family. The day is today. The moment is now. God bless you. Thank you for the invitation, and we'll see you in a little bit.